Hi guys, I have a special book for you today. It's the 4th of July and this book is called John, Paul, George, and Ben. It's written by Lane Smith. And can you tell who this guy is on the front cover there? I think it's George Washington. So let's read this. I hope everybody's having a great 4th of July. John, Paul, George, and Ben by Lane Smith. I get by with a little help from my friends. Special thanks to Alessandra Balzar, Stephen Mellick, Molly Leach, Mark Egan, Dr. Mary Leach, Ann Dybel, and a big tip of the tricorn hat to Bob Shea. Hear, hear, smartest lad in ye old house. Once there were 4 lads, John, Paul, George, and Ben. Make that 5 lads. There was also independent Tom, always off doing his own thing. John was a bold lad. At the start of every school year, the students were asked to write their names on the chalkboard, and every year it was the same story. John, his teacher would say, "You have lovely penmanship. John, your confidence is refreshing. But John, come on. We don't need to read it from space," says John Hancock. Paul was a noisy lad. Before fun was invented, people joined bell-ringing clubs. As a member of Boston's Old North Church, Paul spent hours practicing in the belfry tower. Over time, that bell ringing took a toll on young Paul. All day his head was filled with loud bings and bongs. He had to practically scream just to hear himself talk. Now that was fine around the belfry, but not at work. This is the Revere shop. Extra large underwear? Sure, we have someone. Let's see. Large, extra large. Here they are. Great big extra large underwear. Look at that lady's face. Paul was like a bullhorn in a china shop. Your wig? Yes, it's coming. And your polka dot shirts are coming. And the pink breeches are coming. It took many years and a midnight ride for people to finally appreciate his special talent. The redcoats are coming! Everyone except that big underwear lady. She was still mad. George was an honest lad. One day, he took his shiny new hatchet and chopped down his family's cherry tree. When his father discovered the tree, he asked, "Son, do you know who killed this beautiful little cherry tree?" "I cannot tell a lie," answered George. "'Twas I who chopped down this cherry tree." "Then run to my arms, dearest boy," cried his father, "for you have paid me for it 1,000-fold with your honesty." "Really?" said George. "In that case..." "When I tell you I've taken out that apple orchard, leveled the barn, and made kindling of your carriage, you'll be a wealthy man." Ben was a clever lad. Not only did he have a saying for every situation, he generously shared them with anyone, anywhere, at any time. Fish and visitors stink after 3 days. He considered it his duty to provide frequent free advice. The sleeping fox catches no poultry. Those who in quarrels interpose must often wipe a bloody nose. If your head is wax, don't walk in the sun. 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. The townfolk were so taken with his generosity, they came up with a saying especially for Ben. "Please shut your big yap." I like it, said Ben. Short and to the point. Work a fox or a turkey in there, and I think you've got something. Tom was an independent lad. One day, his teacher, Mr. Douglas, asked the class to make birdhouses by gluing macaroni to ye old balsa wood. Tom happily ignored him and used traditional building materials in a neoclassical design. When the class made a palm tree, Tom took one look on it and said, "Not on your life," and quickly left. To sketch his own tree. "Young Thomas," fumed Teacher Douglas, "would you mind explaining to the class why you insist on working so independently?" "Certainly," said Tom. "In fact, I've taken the liberty to list the very reasons." "Fear not, sir. I've used small words for the benefit of dullards." That means people that aren't smart. Tom learned the power of his words that day. Mr. Douglas told him to pursue all the life, liberty, and happiness he wanted. Independently in the corner, the other students pursued lunch. The rest is history. Say, you want a revolution? Well, John, Paul, George, Ben, and Tom sure did. In April of 1775, they got one. The Redcoats were coming. In fact, King George III's army was marching to Lexington and Concord to arrest John and the other Sons of Liberty. Fortunately, Paul Revere was a noisy man. After his midnight ride, every minute man, woman, and child knew who was coming and what they'd be wearing. It was the start of the Revolutionary War. There's Paul Revere. The Americans needed to formally state their separation from the king. Who better than Thomas Jefferson, an independent man, to write the Declaration of Independence? Simply signing such a document was treasonous and dangerous. Ben Franklin, a clever man, said it best. "We must all hang together," he quipped, "or assuredly we shall all hang separately." One might think twice about signing his name. Not John Hancock, a bold man. He was the first to scribble his autograph, and man, just look at the size of that John Hancock. The war was won thanks to General Washington. Everyone thought he would make a great king for the new United States of America, but George Washington was an honest man. "The last thing we need is another King George," he said. President George, however, has a nice ring to it. Ye Old Epilogue. George didn't live in the White House like all the other presidents. He was asked to live in New York City, where there aren't so many trees. Taking liberties, wherein we set the record straight with ye old true or false section. John had the biggest signature on the Declaration of Independence. True. It was so big he reportedly bragged that the king could read it without his glasses. When John was a boy, his signature was always the biggest one on the chalkboard. That's false. Large classroom chalkboards weren't invented until a few years later. The Sons of Liberty was a secret society. True. The Patriotic Club was formed after King George III imposed the Stamp Act on the American colonies in 1765. John Hancock was one of the leaders. Paul was in a bell-ringing club at the Old North Church. True. We're not sure if this caused him to talk loud, but you try ringing a bell nonstop for hours and see how you talk. The famous Tooth-by-Sea lanterns were lit in that same Old North Church years later, prompting Paul's midnight ride. True. On that night of April 18th, 1775, Paul shouted, "The British are coming!" False. Back then, the Americans considered themselves British. That'd be like saying, "We are coming!" And that sounds pretty silly. Most historians agree he probably said, "The Redcoats are coming." The Revere shop sold extra-large underwear. False. The Revere shop sold silver, but extra-large underwear is always funnier. Silver buckles on shoes sure look goofy. True. George chopped down his father's cherry tree. False. This fable was invented by Mason Parson Weems. Pretty funny considering he made up ye old tale to teach the kids a lesson in history. The phrase ye old gets awfully old after a while. True. When he grew up, George had wooden teeth. False. His fake teeth were made of a lot of things. Hippopotamus teeth, gold, lead, and other human teeth. George was the only president to serve his full term in New York, not in the White House. True. George was the only president to serve in New York, not in the White House, because New York has fewer trees for him to level. False. We cannot tell a lie. The real reason was because the White House wasn't completed until the second president's term. All of Ben's sayings in this book are actually Ben's sayings. True, they're all from his book, Poor Richard's Almanac. Besides inventing clever sayings, Paul also invented bifocals, the Franklin stove, the lightning rod, and the PlayStation 76. True, except for the PlayStation part. Work a turkey in there and I think you've got something. Instead of an eagle, Ben thought America's national symbol should be the turkey. True. Dullard is a funny word. True. Tom's teacher was named Mr. Douglas. True. Tom's hobby were architecture and botany. True. The house he eventually designed for himself, Monticello, is a Roman neoclassical masterpiece. Surrounding it are spectacular fruit, flower, and vegetable gardens. Every kid should enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. True. As long as your teacher says it's okay. That's the end. I love you guys, and I hope you're having a wonderful 4th of July. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.